Hi, and welcome to Headache Vortex, but this video wasn't gonna film itself, so today we're gonna talk about my top 15 albums of 2021. At first I was gonna say that 2021 felt like a slow year for music for me, and it was also pretty backloaded because most of the releases I was interested in came out in the last like 2 or 3 months of the year. But here I am again with a top 15. This year I also decided to include my favorite non-metal albums of 2021 in the list because even though I don't like talking about genres outside of metal that much because I don't know as much about them as I do about metal, I figured this channel was about sharing music, so here we are. Let's get right into it, my top 15 favorite albums of 2021. Starting off at number 15 we have Kataan with their self-titled debut EP. This is a two-man band featuring members of Astronoid and Expel. You could say that this is sort of like a darker Astronoid in terms of sound. And because of that, what I enjoyed about Astronoid's music is sort of present here as well, and it's that emotional depth and outstanding sense of melody, even though on this EP it's applied to a more dramatic context than the euphoric sound of Astronoid. Either way, this was a promising first offering from the band, and I'm looking forward to where they take their sound with this. Next up at number 14 we have Trhä. This is a mysterious one-man black metal band, an extremely prolific project. This year alone they put out 4 releases or something like that. This is the one that I want to feature here. Assuming that everything I know about the person behind this project is correct, they have a really impressive output frequency either way. Not just in this project, but across all of their projects. And for Trhä at least, all of the titles are in an imaginary language, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce them here. On this album we find equal parts black metal, synth ambient and dungeon synth type stuff. And while the black metal on here is solid, it's a bit too obtuse and vague for me. Personally, I found the synth work on this album to be a lot more interesting, and this is mainly why I'm including this album on my top list. Because the lush synth drapes on here just wrap you into an atmosphere that is surreal, introspective and enigmatic, and something about this album just feels nostalgic and familiar. These songs really invite you to get lost in them. And while some people might find 5 minutes of droning bell sounds at a time boring, I for one found them very captivating. Moving on to number 13 we have Stonehealer with their first full-length album, Conquistador, following a 2015 debut EP, but I already had my eyes on these musicians before this project because this is a new project of the Kaminsky brothers, previously of Autolatry. The reason I chose this album for the list is because once again the band has made a huge step forward when it comes to shaping their own sound. On here there's a lot of swirling, angular, prog black metal with riffs that grind against and work off of each other. Kinda like a less technical and more human Krallice. Moving on to number 12 we have Ophidian I with Desolate. 2020 year was a crazy good year for technical death metal with new releases by Ad Nauseam, Archspire, First Fragment, Obscura, Discord, and many more, such as this Icelandic band. I don't know about you, but 2021 tech death made me feel kinda old, because even though I like fast and technical music with lots going on, tech death in 2021 made me have to catch my breath. And this album as well is mind-bendingly technical. At first I wasn't even sure if the drums on here are programmed or not. That being said, I think this band can still do better, at least when it comes to stuff like songwriting, but the melodies, the talent and the promise on here made me choose this album for my number 12 spot. While many other tech death albums could have been in this spot, I chose this album to stand in as a sort of representative for a very good year for the genre as a whole. Moving on to number 11 we have Vouna with Atropos. It is not often that doom metal makes its way into my end of the year list, but this second album by Jenna Beckris did. This is her solo project, which I already reviewed for the channel while I was venturing into the wilderness of central Germany. For this project Beckris plays a blackened doom mix which is rooted in her Greek heritage. This album offers a well-paced black doom mix with a folky and natural atmosphere, and in a genre I would love to be much more adventurous and bold, this is exactly what I want to hear. Entering the top 10 we start off with Grotesque Hysterectomy with Dødsavantgard. This is apparently a Norwegian tech death tech thrash band, but actually this is just weirdo death. The entire album just sounds absolutely filthy and deranged despite the comparatively clean production. This entire 33-minute experience is packed with thrashy riffs, counterintuitive rhythms, and just all around bold and fresh ideas. Well, I do think it's pretty front-loaded. As I said, it's pretty short, so it doesn't really matter. So if you're like me and you like techie, freak, avant death, check this out. At number 9 we have Unto Others with Strength. This band was previously called Idle Hands, and they're still the true Idle Hands in my heart. Their first album, Móna, was one of my favorite albums of 2019, so obviously I was really looking forward to this one. I do have to say that at first I was kind of lukewarm on this album, but after a while I found myself spinning it more than I thought. On here the band continues their 80s heavy metal, post-punk and goth extravaganza, and if there was one thing I could criticize about this album, it's that the band trying to make points about school shootings, child abuse and drug addiction kinda clashes with their style. While they already covered darker subjects on their debut album as well, back then they had a sense of distance and fictionality to them that made it easier to look past this disconnect, but either way, this album is really fun and catchy, so I can't be bothered by this too much. At number 8 we have Hail Spirit Noir with Mannequins. This year the band already came out with a new album. Their previous one, Eat It in Reverse, I featured on my end of the year list last year, and this time the band made a one-off synth album to commemorate their 10th anniversary. This is a synth concept album about a horror short story which is included with the album, and on here there's tons of catchy tracks like the title track, Enter Disco Inferno, or Against Your Will, My Blade. While I found the album a little bit uneven as a pure listening experience, I expect it works better with the short story here. Either way, it was an easy spin for me. At number 7 we have Corr Móna with Abhainn. This is the second album by this Irish band whose music is entirely in Gaelic. This album features a lot of powerfully melodic progressive black metal, and I really loved all the clean vocals and group vocals on here. While this is another album that is kind of front-loaded, the opening run of tracks here is fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to what this band does next. Next up at number 6 we have Tropical Fuckstorm with Deep States. This is the third album in 4 years by this Australian punk rock carambolage. I'm a big fan of Gareth Lydia's work, such as Icy Seaweed, Strange Tourist, and also this project. And while this is probably the band's most reserved and least noisy album, it is still pretty snarky. As always, there's a lot of smart, fun and sarcastic lyricism on here, great vocal performances, and a lot of memorable tracks such as New Romeo Agent, Reporting of a Failed Campaign, Bummersanger, and especially Legal Ghost. A lot of people seem to think that this was a little bit underwhelming, but after spending some time with it, I found that I enjoy it about just as much as the band's previous album, so yeah, still no miss from them. Entering the top 5 we have Voices with Breaking the Trauma Bond. This is the 4th album by this UK-based avant black band featuring members of Akakoki. Tell me in the comments how to pronounce this band's name. I was previously aware of Voices. I briefly listened to their debut album when it came out, but I have to say I have no memory of it, and I never really dove into the band's output until this album. If there was ever an album that I would call cinematic, it's this one, and it's not surprising considering the band is largely and often inspired by movies. You can tell by the great symphonic elements on this album, but aside from that there's also great vocal performances and interesting cues taken from electronic music and post-punk. The result of this is a passionate album about the concept of traumatic bonding, and while you could say that this album is a bit long, it clocks in at something like 70 minutes, it actually doesn't feel that way at all, because the quality throughout this album is very consistent. At number 4 we have Alignment with Power, which is probably a really unexpected pick, because this is just a short 4-track techno EP. That being said, I'm merely a tourist in the genre, so people that are more familiar with techno probably wouldn't think as much of this. However, this is exactly the type of techno that I enjoy, as it neither neglects the highs nor the lows and features a layered songwriting approach. I really love the heavy kicks and the glistening synth lines on here, and especially the title track is such an electrifying banger, one of my favorite tracks of the entire year. Entering the top 3 we have Trhä with Eloge. This is a one-man avant-garde progressive metal band, and this is their 4th album in 4 years. I was aware of the band's previous album, but I have to admit I never really listened to it. This new one was put out by Vide, which I have to say gets my Label of the Year award for their catalog in 2021. This is a genuinely fun and energetic album. Once again, I have to say I really love the vocal arrangements and melodies on here. While this album features a true extreme metal spirit, there are also some unexpected influences here, like some rap-inspired songs. And I would say that this album's most defining quality is just how full of life and fresh ideas it is. And I mean, just look at this gorgeous cover, it's so cool. What is this? The cover here really perfectly captures the sound of this album because it's beautiful, it's alien, it's daring, and it's bold. So yeah, this is my number 3 pick, Trhä with Eloge. At number 2 we have Anti-Ritual with Expel, the Leeches. This is the debut full-length album by this Danish 4-piece crust-punk band, which I recently reviewed on the channel. I've been waiting for this album for a long time, and I've always championed this band ever since I found out about their 2014 debut EP. On this album, Anti-Ritual play uncompromising political punk with extremely potent songwriting and passionate performances. This is a crazy strong album for such an unknown band, and they should really be more well known than they are. And now for number 1, my album of the year. This is Emptiness with Vide. On this album, this Belgian project completes their transition out of metal, much to the chagrin of many of their fans, but in my eyes for the better. And this album was actually my gateway into their previous albums over the course of this year. When this album came out, the pandemic felt very real, and it still does, but somehow February feels so far away. This album wasn't specifically written for the pandemic, but they happened to happen at the same time, and I have to say this is really the perfect soundtrack for this period. I really love the understated approach the band takes on this album with these mangled, broken down post-punk tracks. And I also really love how much of a trap this album is. It sounds so inviting, but once you step in, it really just emotionally drains and exploits you. Because there really is no comfort here. This is a really cold and lonely album. There's a great talk about this album featuring some of the band members over on the Metal Trenches YouTube channel, and in it the band members talk about the vision they had for the sound and the atmosphere on this album. And it's really great to hear that what I took away from it was exactly what they were trying to communicate. This gave me the impression that the band and I share part of our perception of reality, which made this album a really easy pick for my album of the year. And if you want to hear more about it, I reviewed it for the channel. I'll leave a link to the video down in the description. This concludes my top 15 albums of 2021, and in addition to this list, Noise Vortex now also has a Spotify page. So far I have a few playlists on there, one with every album that was featured on the channel in chronological order, as well as a few playlists for my favorite tracks of recent years and also this year. For Noise Vortex, 2021 was actually a really good year. The channel grew to have more than 200 subscribers, which is huge for me, so thank you all very much for watching, subscribing, leaving likes, leaving comments and all that stuff. Thank you very much. Without you, the channel wouldn't be what it is. One of the reasons why I started making video content instead of text content was that I wanted to be able to reach people more easily and to engage with people more easily, and so far this has been a great success for me. I'm going to have a lot less time in the new year, but as always my aim will be to put out more and better content. And I just want you to know that no matter how long the breaks between videos might be, I've always come back to this, so thank you for sticking around. I hope you all had a great holiday season, and I wish you all the best for the new year. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite albums were in 2021, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. If you do, remember to hit the bell so you get notified about new videos as they come out. Over here right next to me you can find more content from the channel. Thank you very much for watching, have a good one, and I'll see you in 2022.